Hi, welcome to PharmaSalon. This is your host, Vivian Juder-Frankel. We feature discussions on regulatory, policy, compliance, and business issues specifically for the compounding pharmacy industry. Our events cover topics related to 503As, 503Bs, hospital pharmacies, and veterinary. I hope you'll attend all of our events, as well as listen to our weekly podcast for insights into your area of compounding pharmacy, as well as other perspectives, as you never know when and where an idea will germinate that will take your business to the next level. Welcome back to our series on partnering for business growth. My guest today is from InfuServe America, a 503A that has a division that focuses on investigational drugs, otherwise known as clinical trials. I was first introduced to this idea by some associates at a pharmaceutical company. They told me how they struggle to find 503As to work with due to a variety of reasons. Some are because of misconceptions on the regulatory issues. Some are due to perceived GMP standards that they think a 503A couldn't possibly attain. So I was really looking forward to this conversation. They've been working in this space for years and was able to shed light on how they got into this area and what it's been like working on clinical trials with a variety of organizations.
Hello, my name is Alexander Pitlars, and I am a pharmacist at InfuServe America in St. Petersburg, Florida. We are a traditional 503A compounding pharmacy doing sterile and non-sterile compounding, but a big part of our business is clinical trial work. We facilitate clinical trials with sponsors, with pharma companies, with CROs or contract research organizations, and are involved in about 20 to 25 different clinical trials at this moment. And happy to share a little insight into what we do and how to get started.
Great. Alex, why don't you tell me how you guys first got into this? I know you came in after they had already started, but I'm sure you've heard the lore of how it began.
Yeah, I did come in after it started. InfuServe has been facilitating clinical trials for almost 10 years now. And the company got started, and the division, I should say, of this business got started with clinical trials really by luck. We had a client who we're now using that was looking for a nurse about 100 miles from our facility. And they called multiple people. They couldn't find a nurse. And they spoke to our owner, David Kazarian, who's still our owner and he shared, okay, I can get you a nurse in an hour. And he basically did. He basically got this nurse. And that company was kind of so impressed with how quickly he was able to turn things around, how quickly he was able to respond to them, that they started providing him business. And that first trial and that first client really was the foundation of who we are today by providing services to nursing organizations or contract research organizations that need a pharmacy to do dispensing, to do storage, to do shipping of drug, not only in the state of Florida, but throughout the country. And we've kind of grown not only from a regulatory standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from a quality standpoint, but from a client standpoint.
Alex, you mentioned working with CROs. I learned about this topic when I was doing events for Big Pharma, talking about manufacturing and compliance, very much the same things that we talk about. So I was wondering, do you have a targeted market? Do you work mostly with CROs? Do you work with pharma, or is it a mix of the two?
I would say a bigger portion of our business does come from the CRO. The industry in the clinical trial world has come up with this term, and InfuServe has been participating in it for a long time, but with called virtual trials, decentralized trials, direct-to-patient trials. And what the industry has developed because of that is these pharma companies are now working more closely with contract research organizations, CROs, to facilitate those. The pharma companies either don't want to do it, don't have the bandwidth, probably a conflict of interest in controlling all that. And a lot of times, if there's nursing services that need to be involved, these CROs have created these business opportunities to be able to facilitate that. And part of that facilitation is now looking for partners. They will look for shipping partners. They will look for storage depots. They will look for pharmacies to assist in that clinical trial.
I know that some of the hesitancies, I think that 503As worry about is the regulatory stuff, which you mentioned. Did you guys have to jump through any hoops? What are the challenges? I know that 503A is supposed to be very patient specific. So if you're only allowed to create drugs on a one-to-one basis, how are you able to work with these companies and do these clinical trials or investigative drug trials?
We operate as a traditional 503. We process all of our, they call them subjects in the clinical trial world. So we process all of our subject prescriptions as patient specific. We will share that with any sponsor that comes to us, any CRO that says, okay, we need a prescription. It might not have the subject's name, and a lot of times, the majority of the times, it doesn't because it's blinded or it's confidential or whatnot. So we're taking care of patient 00167 or 101102. And these subjects obviously have an identified name, but we will process a prescription that's signed by a physician and has the prescription information on it so we can dispense it. We put a pharmacy label on it and we dispense it as that. From the jumping through hoop standpoint, that's probably a little bit of a leap sometimes for maybe new clients or maybe pharma directly. They're not used to that. So we have to work with that. The other area is we are licensed in all 50 states, including the District of Columbia. So it gives us that ability to be able to say, we're prepared to do this. We're prepared to assist and facilitate that because of our regulatory and our licensure.
I've got a couple of questions. So when you say you're licensed in all 50 states, does that mean that you do a mail order business? Because you said a lot of these are virtual trials. So if they have a patient over in Maine, you're licensed to be able to send them a prescription in Maine. It doesn't mean you have facilities out there, right?
Correct. We are one location out of here in St. Petersburg, Florida, and have pharmacy licenses as any mail order compounding nationwide pharmacy would have. So we can ship to Maine, and we operate, I guess, as a mail order pharmacy, if you will, and it's very basic capacity. We get a prescription here, we're going to process it, we're going to fill it, we're going to check it, and then we're going to ship it to Maine, either on a national carrier or a courier service that works directly. These virtual clinical trials and direct-to-patient clinical trials have really resulted in patients being at home. So a lot of our drugs are home delivered, but a lot of our drugs are site delivery. So we might be delivering it to the clinical research site in Maine or in California or in Texas. And then the patient's going to come into there, and they may come in there for one visit or every fourth visit or something like that.
So one of the other questions is always going to be, I guess, about facilities. I know when you're doing drug batch runs and things like that, larger ones, you have to comply with CGMP standards. Are you guys held to those standards, or can you still do USP 797?
So I think it's a mirror of both. It's a representation of both. The pharma company doesn't understand USP, or they may not understand USP, and they expect GMP. So some of the things that we do are very GMP. Facility is 24/7 monitor for temperature and humidity, automatic notification of excursions that go out of that, automatic notification of approaching an excursion point. When receiving a drug, we follow certain CGMP processes. When dispensing, we follow more traditional pharmacy dispensing processes. Mm-hmm. If we have to be involved in the mixing side of it, that's an easier conversation to have with the pharma companies or CROs, because they recognize that, okay, if I'm doing any kind of manipulation of a drug, then they're going to expect 797, 795 requirements. But some of the other things, they are expecting a higher level of quality, if you will, within our operations.
And did you guys was there adjustments that you had to make, or were you already, because I know that's like a big issue, especially again with the 503As, is conforming to CGMP standards. So if somebody's thinking about this, what would your advice be? Is it a big thing? Is it just once you get used to it, it's not that much? I mean, I know is there a large investment in the facilities?
There is an investment. Large might be an inappropriate word to use because everything's relative in terms of, we have friends and colleagues that are running larger facilities than InfuServe, but there is an investment from a a number of areas from a facility basic building standpoint, having the ability to receive drug, having the ability to store materials, boxes, shippers, anything like that. So having a warehouse associated with all that, of storage of IP. We've got 2 walk-in refrigerators and 2 walk-in freezers on top of the other standalone equipment that we have, so we can maintain capacity, because you might be getting 500, 600, 700 SKUs of one drug that you're working with in a clinical trial. So facility setup is critical. Operational setup is important too, because quality is really needed. So they will come in and they will look at that, your SOPs, your procedures, your processes, and what you're doing. And so having that background of a quality department that can support those things, that can improve on those things. And that's probably, if somebody would ask me how to get started, before I would even tell them how to get started into getting the clientele, I think what's more important is starting at the facility level, at your pharmacy level, and be prepared for that. Because what's going to happen is if you get started without that, the sponsor comes in and does a qualification visit, which 95% of the time it happens, they're going to find areas that they may be questioning whether they should continue to work with you on that. So one of the areas that you can do is go through accreditation processes, go through inspections, complete gap analysis that are above and beyond just pharmacy licensure, but some of those higher level like PCAB or NABP, or if you want to bring in, some GMP consultants. I like to say we kind of operate in a GMP light environment, because some things we're doing very GMP and other things we're not.
I was going to ask you regarding the consultants, if you are thinking, if an organization is thinking of doing this, are there consultants that specialize in getting you up to speed to work in clinical trials, or would you just bring in a GMP consultant and then kind of work with them on it?
I'm not familiar with any, not to say that there isn't any out there. I'm personally not familiar with them, but if you would follow, one of the things that I've learned, and it's been an eye-opener as a pharmacist, you work in an operation as a pharmacy, and as a pharmacist, you think the most, if you will, if you had to rank something, the most critical step in a prescription going out is making sure that pharmacist has done complete verification of that drug before it goes out. Right drug, right patient, all those things that we as pharmacists know. And I've come to learn that in the clinical trial world, it's that plus everything else. Those all are at the highest and at the same level. They come in and they say, show me your security, show me your temperature monitoring, show me your SOPs. And if those aren't to that top level, and those are GMP type things, right? If you see a pharma company getting a 483 for poor documentation or not having the temperature area monitored, that's a big deal to them, and that's a big deal to the clinical trials as well.
I want to back up a little bit. We talked a little bit about the investment. What percentage of your business would you say comes from clinical trials?
About 50% of our business right now is clinical trials. What you'll find is that the staff that's needed to support it may not be as high, and then there's going to be some overlap. So we've got dedicated staff that are working on clinical trials, that are doing the work. But if things require manipulation, mixing, compounding, anything like that, we're using some of our non-clinical trial staff, just compounding technicians and compounding pharmacists, to be involved in either manipulating, checking those areas. So there's a little bit of crossover that's used there, which actually brings another important point. Training is a huge important thing for these clinical trials. They want to see your training processes, your procedures. They want to see documentation of those training. And so as you start to cross that level of, okay, I maybe have X amount of people working on this clinical trial day in and day out, but if I've got a technician now that's involved, well, now I need to make sure their training is to their level. And so now it's not just basic pharmacy tech training or pharmacist training, but now it's all those other training, like good clinical trials, good documentation practices, anything related to that clinical trial world. That training now involves those type of people.
So is it easier to, I mean, I'm just curious, then do you just train the whole staff at the same time, make sure everybody's up to those standards, or do you mostly just train your dedicated staff and then occasionally train the other people that might have crossover?
Yeah, we don't train the entire staff. We've got areas and departments that have zero interaction with the clinical trial department and therefore don't need that. But yeah, what we have found is a lot of the training has resulted in better training of our employees that aren't doing even clinical trial work. So, for instance, good documentation practices, right? So the importance of clear and concise and accurate information on clinical trial work is critical. And now we've implemented that to our technicians. So if they're writing a date, that date needs to be written in a specific format. If they make a mistake, it has to be written in a specific format, and it's made them better people.
Mm-hmm. I know some of the, again, going back to some of the GMP struggles that the smaller pharmacies have. Would you say that it sounds like what you're saying is driving for the GMP has also then enhanced or helped the other side of the business?
Yeah, it really has. It really, when you have that perspective and you start to see some of those things and the importance that outside people put on it, then you start to appreciate that. And a good example is the investigational process, right? So say a mistake is made. The level that as trial clients of what we do to investigate it, find out what happened, determine that there was a root cause, complete the investigation, complete a gap analysis, and ensure that whatever new measures you've put in place are effective, are something that a lot of 503As aren't doing. But when you've done that and when you put those processes in place, you realize that you're going to always improve. You're always, everything and nothing but good is going to come out. It's going to improve your processes. Now, what you need for that is fortunately, but maybe difficult info or difficult to have is the personnel behind that, right? So we've got 3 or 4 dedicated quality staff members, quality department members that work on these type of things so that they're readily available and turned around in a timely manner.
Do you have any thoughts on what you would need to do to prepare to get into the space? I know we kind of touched on it, but I'm just wondering, there are a couple of things I'm wondering any sort of advice or tips that you would want to give people. And the other kind of thing I would like to touch on a little bit is how do you connect with the CROs or the pharma? If you've got any thoughts on that for somebody who wants to get into this.
Kind of reiterating what I shared before, as far as creating the facility and the environment, the procedures, the SOPs, those are things that they're going to ask for and get into. I think another thing is, and maybe because I'm on and have actively searched and looked for them, I get daily emails or notices about meetings or webinars or anything like that around decentralized clinical trials or virtual clinical trials. And so I'm reading about what their expectations are and their needs are and learning more about it. So I think understanding the industry, as you and I both know, and the listeners, sometimes talking the talk is just as important. So when you use words that they are familiar with, it builds confidence. Mm-hmm. I think an area to really get started that is beneficial that I've recently learned, quite honestly, is there are a lot of local, in your own town or in your own area or in your own state, clinical research sites that are occurring, or maybe doctors' offices that are doing clinical research, and even just reaching out and starting there to see what is needed, what are they doing, do they operate in this realm, can they help you with a small study, and develop those things and learn those things from those kind of hands-on type of activity. Universities are another good example that are places that you might be able to start and partner with, but that's a good area where it's local, where it's more intimate, and it's a good learning opportunity versus the larger groups where they may have a certain level of expectation that just getting started you won't meet. To connect in the world, I smile when you brought that up earlier, and I still smile because that's probably the area as a working in this industry now for a while, sales and growth were so critical and part of my business and in the past, and continues to be with here. And I've struggled to find out how to get new clientele or to get new trials outside of the current business that you're working with. We get a lot of repeat business. I would say I regularly hear from the same 5 or 6 clients saying, hey, got a new study, hey, got a new study, because they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But where I've struggled is to connect with new CROs, because there's many more that I don't work with that are out there, or pharma companies in general. We've worked with some, but not all of them. And how do I connect more with there? I do a lot of calling, but if I read an article, or if I read about a new trial, or if I'm on clinicaltrials.gov, if I see something that kind of is in line with what I'm doing, I'm reaching out to them and seeing if they need something, and see if an opportunity gets created out of that.
Do you know if the big companies put out RFPs? Like, is that a goal to get on an RFP list? Do they do that work like that?
Well, an RFP list is interesting. I'm going to actually write that down for myself to look into. But we get a lot of RFPs from our clients, say, hey, create an RFP for this study, and we're doing that. But I don't know if there's any kind of RFP list out there. The other area, and this may be tying right into that, I have not had a lot of success in, but I have not put a lot of effort into it, is the organizations that represent it, right? So there's a decentralized clinical trial association that just got started very recently, and they've got all the big players in it. And so is that an area? There's the Association for Clinical Research Organizations. So maybe connecting within these association groups, getting your name in within them is an area or a way to maybe they have, RFP lists or whatever. The other thing is there are meetings. There are meetings that you can go to where clinical trials is the main focus, and you can be a sponsor there, you can be an attendee there, you can have a booth there, and that's always opportunistic.
Right. So basically the tried and true sales and marketing techniques, just start reaching out.
Yeah, you have to start reaching out and getting your name out there. I remember several months ago, we got a new client, and we're like, out of curiosity, how did you get us? And they're like, we Googled. I was like, okay, I got to be better than that.
Well, I think that covers all my questions. Anything else you think people should know?
No, I welcome, I've learned from colleagues, from past mentors, that sharing is a critical part of what we do and how we can make each other stronger. And I welcome anybody that wants to discuss this more to contact me personally, and I'd be happy to assist and help and see where we can work together.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you will join us again next week. At Pharma Salon, we produce content and conferences for the compounding pharmacy industry that focuses on learning through conversation. It is our mantra that everyone's experience is worth hearing and can benefit from someone else in the industry, and we're the ones to facilitate those discussions. Our next event is the Compounding Pharmacies Grand Salon. 4 days, 4 tracks: inspection preparation response, quality validation and design, environmental monitoring, and leadership. Pre-recorded presentations will be released on September 20th, and live presentations will be October 5th through 8th. CE credits will be available for both pharmacists and technicians. For more information, go to www.pharmasalon.com/compounding.